So welcome to today's topic where we're going to be talking about empowering women's wealth, navigating financial independence, right? We're going to have a discussion on women and money, and this delves into various aspects of financial empowerment, addressing gender disparities in earning, saving, investment, and financial literacy. We're going to explore strategies for closing the gender wealth gap and promoting economic independence and fostering a culture of financial education and empowering amongst women. Well, let's hope we can get through all of those topics. So, welcome everybody to today's.
Geez, are we gonna cure poverty?
Sorry, what did you say, Alison?
Are we going to cure world poverty too? That's a hell of an agenda.
Well, I did throw out a discussion to Peter about if all the countries are in national debt, who's in national surplus?
Paul, you bloody well know. Yeah, I know you're asking because it just the other side of the balance sheet. It can be private, corporate, or national holders. For every debtor, there's a creditor.
Yeah, and Peter has a very interesting take on that. But let's get back onto the women and topic. So I want to welcome Margaret, first timer. So welcome, Margaret. It's great to have you on board. We've got Alison, welcome back, and Sally. So they're going to represent the women in today's topic. And we've got Brendan, Peter, and Adrian, who will either agree or disagree with the women. We'll soon find out. They are gentlemen, but we'll see how gentlemanly they are. So I think I'd like to start with Margaret, because when I told you what the topic was going to be, do you think that men and women are treated equally and get the same pay for the same work that they do?
No, generally not. Generally not. Especially in sort of corporate world, probably more so. But even at that middle level, they seem to struggle to get equal roles, equal opportunities. Often have to work harder to get overlooked for promotions in general, and obviously time off for families and other things like that can tend to sort of put them on the back foot as far as experience goes. So it's sort of a difficult, I suppose, path for some women to either break through and get the recognition for doing the same thing. In fact, often or not, they've got to go above and beyond to be noticed. Yeah. In my opinion.
All right. Okay. So that's an interesting take, and a lot of that I kind of like have heard in the past, and I think some of that is absolutely true. And I'll ask Alison and Sally their views. Do you agree with Margaret or?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in a very masculine-oriented environment, like, the private sector, but I worked in the Department of Defence, which was public sector, but a very masculine-oriented kind of environment. And women definitely, were either overlooked or they had to be more blokey than the blokes to get ahead. And ironically, the ones that did get ahead often had a male mentor. And so where you do have men who step up to, help women to navigate, and, let's face it, we are different and we're meant to be different. And I don't think we should try and be the same, because men and women each have their strengths and they obviously have their challenges. And we are great complements for each other. We're meant to work together, but it needs to be in a kind of mutually respectful and mutually beneficial way. And I think quite often, because obviously we've been a patriarchal society for whatever, certainly with the Western world, so all our systems have been set up that way. And so it's very hard, or it has been very hard generally, for women to rise to the top. And often the way they've had to do that hasn't always been ethical, sometimes I had to say, or even in a respectful way. And it's been often at the, being quite ruthless at the expense of something else or someone else. And so I think that's been part of the problem. But having said that, that doesn't mean that it is universal. And there are definitely pockets where, this doesn't apply, and women have had the opportunity and they are shining, and they are able to make the contribution that they are capable of doing. So I've said quite a lot, so I'll stop there.
Well, one of the things you said is that they have to be ruthless. And I don't think that's a woman trait. I think that men at the top, if you actually have a look at all those men at the top, they're absolutely ruthless. And that old Brendan's got something to say.
Margaret Thatcher, end of story.
Totally. Totally.
Julia Gillard as well.
Settle down. She was awesome.
Oh, we got support of Julia.
Well,
Sally.
having been in government and having a little bit of inside knowledge, apparently when Julia Gillard was acting prime minister, when Rudd wasn't there, more work got done, more stuff got signed through than when sort of Rudd was in his PM role. So she was really efficient. Unfortunately, she got a lot of bad press, and I think that again is the kind of stuff, particularly that Abbott threw at her. Nobody would throw at a man. And
Exactly.
particularly in politics, that's just so shit. Pardon my language, but actually Julia Gillard is a prime example of how, as a very capable woman, and I mean she rose to partnership in a law firm, and yes, with Slater and Gordon, and you can have your opinion about Slater and Gordon, which I don't want to get into, but she obviously had the goods, and she was not just vilified, but I think she was really sort of brought down in a really personal, horrible way. And I don't think that happens to men. I think that happens to women more than to men, sadly.
So
and often by women too.
Look, one of the documentaries I watched many, many years ago was Rats in the Ring. And this was actually a documentary about an election in Leichhardt Council. And when you see just how despicable politicians are, I think all politicians go through that. I don't think Julia Gillard was signaled out because she was a woman. I think she was signaled out because she was a politician. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't agree. She was singled out. It was very personal. And no guy would have got treated the same way. Absolutely not. The things that she got targeted on weren't even about the job half the time.
Exactly.
How
she looked.
How she looked.
Big hips, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, no guy stands up there as a politician and gets told about that. Comics will make fun of them in a comedic way and cartoons and things, but not personal slating like that. It's common when women are in those kind of headed up roles, in my opinion.
The fact she didn't have children was used against her. Sorry.
I'm just saying the media is always biased. It always has an agenda, and that was maybe the agenda was to take her out.
And we're talking, we are, and I'm going to throw this over to Peter, but we are talking about the media went after Julia Gillard and she had to put up with things that no other politicians had to put up with. I'm going to be a bit controversial and I'm going to speak to Peter about this, but in America, there was a president that copped a lot of unfavorable media attention in Donald Trump. What's your take on that, Peter?
Well, that's exactly it. That's another prime example. Like he's got his famous line of fake news, which it is. Like seriously, the majority of the stuff on our TV is just all bullshit, propaganda, and it's pushing an agenda. Like I said, there's an agenda there. They want to push it down that way. That's the way it will go. And there's no different with, like I said, we mentioned earlier about the woke thing, what they're doing, pushing that on our kids. That's part of their agenda. They want people coming home questioning their parents about their sexuality. For Christ's sake, these kids are prepubescent. Like it's just totally wrong. That's I know that's totally not on the topic, but this is what I'm pushing. That the media always has an agenda and it follows and sticks to it. And if they don't stick to that, well, they haven't got a job. Simple as that.
Okay, Brendan. What do you want to say in regards to
no one has ever actually thrown anything at Trump for being a man. Number two, he's a convicted sex abuser and rapist. Number three, all you got to do if you're talking about the States is look at how the right wing, which lauded Taylor Swift, an incredibly successful young woman, have gone to the other side once she's not on their side anymore. So to kind of go on topic, this women thing is similar to racism, discrimination, religious exclusion, all of the other things, because human beings are, sorry, going to use an Irish word, stupid. Women's ability exceeds men in that they can give birth and we can't. It doesn't exceed men in general in terms of powerlifting 350 kilograms, which is not a skill that most of us ever need to succeed. So this whole thing is much more described by Gillard and Abbott, because no one ever attacked Abbott or Dutton or anybody else because they were a man. But women are emotional, strident, whatever it happens to be. And look, I've been around the block. Like, I entered the accounting profession 40 years ago, and I trained with a bunch of women in Ireland, which is a pretty traditional society at the time. We were all treated equally. But what has happened since then is more men have become partners and hit the top levels of business compared to the women that I joined with, many of whom actually went in different directions, and that is a physiological issue. But that human desire to keep things the same, to not give up what they have, whether you call it inertia or exclusion or racism or discrimination, and in most cases it's unconscious, is very, very real. And it doesn't just apply to women. It applies to your accent, your color, your religion, your height, your fatness, your thinness, or whether you're from feckin' Mars as well.
Okay, well, as a short person, I know what it's like to be short and be discriminated against being short. So I haven't heard from Sally or Adrian yet. So Sally, what's your, and you and I actually did a one-on-one on this once before, and you were very calm at that time. What's your view with regards to this topic?
Well, I was in banking and finance in the 80s and 90s, and I think particularly in the 90s, it was going through this readjustment phase. So I think it was at Combank. They were one of the first banks when I was working there. I'd been at NAB and they really had no women in senior management. And then late 90s, Combank started and then ended up putting on Gail Kelly. But it was interesting watching women climbing the ranks. Those with pure, had the intelligence and they had the everything. And then, to be fair, there were a lot of women that were sleeping their way to the top as well. That was the two kind of options, go on your merit, or you just who you knew and what you could sort of flood your eyelids. And I think now it's done too much of a 360 where they're trying to match the numbers of having so many women in management. And I think, it's the best person for the role, which I think we spoke about back at the time, that, if you were the best candidate, regardless of who you were, what colour, whatever, just a single name, and that was based on your merit, well, then you got the job. But I think also for women now in business, back then it was very much the perfume steamroller. Women wore suits, they dressed in a very masculine way. And I think now for women in business and in corporate in particular, it's more the warrior woman using more of the feminine. So it's okay to wear feminine dresses and feminine prints and wear the lippy and look hot without having to look like a very masculine energy back in the 80s, 90s with the suits. So now it's done a 360. So I suppose there's two parts here, is that I think in some ways it's gone too far trying to equal the numbers, and I think it should be based on merit, of course, and it should be equal pay, and I don't think it is equal pay. Still, even in this day, 2024, it's just like there should be no starving children in the world. It's the same sort of thing. It just doesn't make sense. Equal job, equal pay, right? That's just where I stand. And what else was I going to say? And also, when I was a housewife, and I don't even like that term, but that's what Dad always put down on the forms. He said, you've got to put down housewife. When I was at home looking after the kids, I looked into some study, and if you worked at how much at that time, a lot more women were at home, but now it's changed. But whoever stays at home looking after the kids, it's a very, if you had to pay for it, you couldn't afford it, and I had 4 kids and was home for a long time, and not enough money would have paid me to do that, if it was for someone else. Getting it all mixed up, but you get the idea. So that's my little bit of an input. So it's all a matter of a mindset, really. So and I just think equal job, equal pay, and it should be by now.
I love the fact that you've brought up two ways a woman can get to the top. One is to outperform the man, and the other way is to sleep to the top. And I suppose not many men can sleep their way to their top.
Well, they can these days, but not back then because there weren't any female bosses.
Well,
but
unless your boss is gay, I suppose.
but there was someone who then went to run the I can't talk about who they are, but anyway, long story short, she had a bloke sleep his way to the top. So yes, I have seen that happen as well.
Okay.
And there are different ways of men kind of using influence. So you go and play golf, and you do other little jobs for the senior bloke. So that whole golf kind of paradigm as well shut a lot of women out. And I know my sister, when she was in management, and she was not able to spend time with the boys because, or she wasn't able to get known kind of socially because she didn't play golf with the guys. And so that kind of shut her out. And there are different ways that men, even if they weren't sleeping their way to the top, they were doing other socially acceptable things, that were giving them the inside running over someone who wasn't playing the game.
Funny you should say that. I started, I was in the electronic component industry for years and had worked my way up. And the two directors of our companies were guys who played golf, and they'd always go on golf weekends and golf during the day, and I'm stuck back in the office doing all the work for everybody. And I thought, well, this isn't very smart. I'm third in charge, and I'm the one sitting in the office doing all the work and running the place. So I thought, bugger it, I'm going to learn how to play golf. So I started playing golf with the blokes because that's what you do. Because otherwise, I was the one missing out on making those networks. Which is what they were doing, was building networks within the industry and with customers and suppliers. And I thought, well, the only way I'm going to do it is if I join the boys. So I did.
Did you enjoy golf?
I haven't played it for years. I do, but I haven't played it for years.
Okay. And that is actually one way to get ahead, whether you're male or female. It's your network, your network is your net worth as well. So if you're good at networking, I don't play golf, but if I played a lot more golf, I would have a lot more people that would be part of my network. We haven't heard from Adrian, who's been sitting there very quietly. Adrian, and then I've got a few questions I want to ask. But Adrian, what's your input on this?
Wow, well, this really spiraled from women in employment to politics, and I'm going to work backwards from that because, as you know, my favorite saying is politics is really just Hollywood for ugly people. And they are a very small sector of the population. They do have influence, but as much as everyone talks about them, they don't directly involve everybody's lives, even with their policies. A lot of policies, people are affected by them differently. But I happen to think, take that statement about Hollywood for ugly people was Charles Bronson from the Death Wish movies back in the 80s. Now apply that to the people who are in business climbing up, whether they're men or women, wanting to reach the top of what we would say is the corporate ladder, which that group of people have been earmarked the same as politicians as having psychopathic tendencies, if not sociopathic tendencies. And it's a desire for power over people that is more psychological than just the position or the money. It's not for the reward of doing the work, it's for the power they gain from that position. And again, the people that want to climb the corporate ladder are a small number in the population. If you go by percentages, there are a large number of people don't want to climb the corporate ladder. They're happy to have a job, go home to their families at 5 o'clock or go to the pub and have their weekends without overtime or projects that need to be completed on a Sunday. And if you look at what's happening in the world now, yeah, sure, salaries for men and women are not getting as close as they should be, but they are making progress, and it's staggered in different industries and areas. So, you know, that's an evolutionary thing that's not going to happen overnight necessarily. Look at salaries for female sports people compared to males. That's also an inequity that people want to fix. So, you know, I see in the media right now, there is a big turn for mothers to be mothers and to not try and balance work and life. And if you look at our younger generations, like millennials, they have no interest in climbing the corporate ladder because their generation says, if I want that level of power and money, I build the ladder myself. I start my side gig and leverage it to the revenue level and profit level. I need to employ other people, and they create the ladder from up down, not the other way. So I think we're using our lenses from what we grew up with through 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. But I can see a real change. I've been very optimistic in the last 2 decades in seeing heads of government be female. I think we had a situation maybe not as far as 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, where we had a significant numbers of heads of state that were women in what you would call third world, second world, and first world countries. It's progress. You know, people have been busy trying not to starve, and now we have the luxury, and it's sad that it had to be a luxury to consider women to be the same as men in every aspect of life. But I would venture to say, having worked in the corporate life, I would not wish any man or woman to sacrifice their dignity in order to get ahead in politics or business, because it's you know, there are so many other options, and a lot of people are living now not to work, they're living to live, and the work thing is really not so much the focus. It's having the revenue stream, whatever that may be. So you're not talking about climbing to get the high salary. Some positions in companies are very, very low, but command the highest salary. Look at sales and marketing. They don't necessarily need to be the CEO or having to play golf. They need to generate the income for the company. The way we work. So I'm going to put my line in the sand with that stance in the talk today, because I think we've evolved and we've progressed, but things are not where they should be, but they're not going backwards either.
All right. Okay. Thanks for that. What I want to do is we mentioned sports, so I want to talk about one sport in particular, and that's tennis. Now, do men and women get paid in tennis the same?
They do.
They do.
Not. I think in the
Not
ATP,
quite.
they do now.
I think only recently.
Yeah, it's only
Okay.
recent. Yeah,
And not at
Who-
every tournament, as I understand
not in
it
every
either.
tour. So
Right,
the
so
Australian Open, they did.
So I'm talking about the Opens, right? No, Wimbledon, Australian Open. So they get paid the same as men, right?
They do now.
Should they not play 5 sets instead of 3 sets then?
That comes
Let
down
me
to a
answer
physical
that.
thing. You know that,
That's
right?
good.
Yeah,
Sorry?
but no,
It's a
let me
physical
answer
thing.
that. Let me answer that from a male point of view. I don't watch as much tennis as I used to, but I always preferred women's tennis because there was more tennis as opposed to just artillery shots across the net. So shouldn't we actually look at eyeballs, which is the reason that most women's sports have not been well paid? If you have the same number of eyeballs for one set, it doesn't matter if it's 1 set or 20 sets. It's the eyeballs that generate the revenue.
But don't more people watch men's tennis than women's tennis?
Don't think there's much of a difference for the Opens.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Well, okay, because I personally think it'll be great if women played 5 sets of tennis. Margaret, you said that is a physical thing. You don't think they can physically do it?
Well, I think that's what it comes down to, is that men are, well, they're stronger, probably for longer. They've got more endurance in that way than women, just purely with the way they're built, with their muscles. We're not the same. We physically aren't the same. We physically can't lift the same amount of weight as a man. So it comes down to just physical capability, really, at the end of the day. You're going to get your odd one that can probably do it, but the majority probably couldn't or shouldn't, or they could do it and then they'd be ruined for the next tournament. You know what I mean? It sort of comes down to that as well. Like, a woman's never going to run the same 100 metres as another 100-metre sprinter, a male. It's not going to happen, likely.
Well, you never know. In 100 years, you might
maybe.
switch.
Perhaps.
Evolution.
Yeah.
Look, one of the things women do that men don't do is give birth, and I don't think any man can give birth or would want to give birth.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm backing out of that one.
I don't think I would.
You
like
wouldn't
to,
have more than one child, that's for sure. You'd stop at one.
Brendan mentioned the amount of eyeballs that get to see it. Like, look what the Australian women's soccer team did. Like that really, I'm a soccer player, and it was great to see. It really was. I think that probably instilled more, encourage for our sportsmen and women than any men's soccer game that I've seen. So, and that was a really good attribute. I was glued to the screen, and even all my kids,
Empowering.
how good was that?
So
How great was that?
empowering.
Everyone was talking about it. Even the people, the tradies in the street were talking about things like that, and which was fantastic.
Yeah.
With that said, I think the reason that was the case is because Australian men's soccer is pretty pathetic on the world stage.
There is that.
We got robbed of the World Cup about 2 years ago.
If our soccer team was playing for the World Cup, we'll probably have the same kind of enthusiasm as we did for the women, because the women are up there. So I don't know if it's a gender thing as opposed to, hey, we're Australian, let's support our own team. So I'm going to ask another question. And firstly, I want to know, we're all business people in this room, yeah? We all run our own business?
No.
Yes.
I used to. I'm working for a company now, but I have run my own business.
Have you run your own business in the past?
I have, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's say that you had to hire somebody to fill a position, and they're still in their 20s, and it came down to a man and a woman, and they had exactly the same qualifications. Everything's equal, except for the fact that she's probably going to go off and have children. Who would you hire? Would you hire the man or the woman? Margaret.
Me?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be worried about that, because I would go with whoever I thought would work best with our team at the time. So regardless of male or female, it's more about how they would fit into, if they've got the same exactly everything. For me, it would come down to the actual individual and what I thought they could bring to the team. And outside of that, male or female, I wouldn't think twice. I've employed many females who have then gone on and started a family, but have contributed greatly and come back into the business, and it's not been an issue for us as a business going forward. So we've employed a lot of females in the electronics industry in the past, and lots of males as well. So it generally just comes down to the fit, what's going to fit our business. Not whether that they're going to leave in 2 years or 18 months or whatever to have a family. We've got one lady in the business I'm back in again after 22 years of leaving. She's still there in the business. She'll have been in the company for 30 years, and she's raised a family and worked that around the role the whole time. Good company to work for, because they've allowed that to happen. But, we reward those who put in. So, yeah, it doesn't really, for me, it's not about whether they're male or female.
Okay, before I go on to Brendan, just remember that for a small business, your biggest expense is staff. And if you go and train somebody up, and in 2 years' time, they might go off, even if they're gone off for 6 months or 12 months, it could be the difference between surviving and not surviving. Brendan, what did you want to ask?
So I've had this experience many, many times. Myself and my wife ran a recruitment company in Ireland for a number of years. I ran it for the first dozen years of the century, and recruitment is, more female than male. And there were many, many, many times when we were hiring people. So we were a small to medium-sized business, employed about 24, 25 people. It was a regular occurrence that you would come down to do a hire person A or person B. It never actually came down to we'd have a discussion. I wonder, will she get pregnant? And there were two reasons. There's always a difference between the candidates at the end of the day. So we probably picked a woman once and a man another time because we felt they were the better fit. Here's the other reason. Statistically, your average 20-year-old woman is now going to have 0 children before she's 30 or 31. So if you really, really want to get, and I'm going to call it silly about it, you can worry about whether she's going to get pregnant or not. It's not a factor in most of these decisions, in my experience.
Anyone else want to add to that?
It might be more now your 30-year-old rather than your 20-year-old woman who's facing that question.
And she may be more senior and important at that time too, and they're likely to be more forgiving because she's a key person at that stage of her career. But really, my way of thinking about things changed when I read the Da Vinci Code back in the early 2000s, and that was really about the equality of men and women, and that if we can find the right balance, we're going to be cooking with gas. If we can if we can work out that balance between men and women, the people at the top, the people on the bottom, we will really progress as a species, because we waste so much time. If you look at what's happening with, you could say every person on the planet is suffering from intergenerational trauma about the sexes, because we all grew up with different situations, and we've all encountered different situations and ceilings in work, family, and public life.
Look, but back in the day, Brendan, it's my parents, my grandparents, when they grew up and they have families, one income was enough to support the whole family.
Yeah.
Today, that's not really the case. It's really hard for one income to support the family. So, has it gone to that extreme where women are forced out of the home to look after the kids because they have to go out and make some money?
Yep.
Margaret's nodding, yeah.
Yes.
Adrian's going, no. Good. Have a debate.
It depends on the age of the people. Again, we're sucked into thinking, keeping the old standards that we grew up with is unsustainable now. That's why you have families. Someone loses a job, they use it as an opportunity, an excuse to go and travel the world with their kids, and they become digital nomads. So they find a new way of earning income. If you look at most people now, they're also saying that family is more important. It's more important to have the mother there in those early years of the kid's life, and to not try and balance because of the price of childcare as well, that you're paying someone such a large amount of money in a lot of cities in Australia to have your kid at daycare and things like that, when it would actually just be cheaper. So false economies. I mean, going to work for somebody else is the big ticket. Do they want to do it, or can they find another way of having an income? It used to be the way we went to school was so that we could go and work for somebody else. Now you go there and steal ideas so you can start your own company with your mates and get rich.
But look, if you pardon me, Paul, I agree with all of that. But again, you're getting back to the nature of human beings. economics and the structure of society says we want that latest iPhone. we have a 72-inch flat screen TV. I want an 84-inch one. It's been in the news over the last few days that the automobiles that we're driving in Australia are getting bigger and bigger at a time when you have to be not very bright not to realize that the climate is changing as a result of emissions from automobiles and everything else that's going on. So this is something that we're choosing to do without recognizing the consequences. It comes down to the structure of society. It comes down to mass marketing. It comes down to peer pressure. It comes down to individual desires, and it comes down to mass psychology. This is not an easy thing to address.
No. I would say, look, I was fortunate. I didn't have children till I was 29, but we're in a financial position where I didn't have to work. I had twins first up, so going back to work straight away wasn't really an option anyway, with childcare, etc. I went on to have 2 more children after that, again, financially able to do it. But in saying that, it came at a cost. It comes at a cost where you then have to cut your cloth accordingly. You live within your means. You don't have the latest and the greatest. You don't have the newest TV, the newest car, or what have you. Had a comfortable enough lifestyle. There's lots of things we would like to have done, but we weren't doing big holidays. And
she's dropped out.
How is
All
that
right.
possible?
Maybe Big Brother's listening and didn't like what you said. Who knows?
Maybe maybe her boss came past.
It's a male conspiracy.
It's a male conspiracy. Oh, look, yeah, all the women have dropped off. Alison, you're the last woman standing.
Exactly. The conspiracy is to actually get you by yourself, Alison.
We don't want to
It'll
get
take
too
more
dark,
than 4
guys.
men to intimidate me.
We're being recorded.
So
Paul, I think you should monitor attendees and see if she comes in, so you can let her back in.
sorry about that.
No, she comes in straight away.
Sorry.
That's right, Margaret. We were just saying Big Brother didn't like what you're saying and just
No, bloody children trying to call me. I'm trying to ignore them.
Oh.
The children. They must be, you were talking about your children and they must be listening.
They must have
known.
But, I think just if I can go back, it's, we had a lot of friends who they went back to work because they wanted to go on their big holidays and they wanted more and renovations and things like that. We just put all that on hold to some degree as a family. We made a decision to live within our means, raise our children. Very fortunate to be able to go, have 4 children at home. I've worked the whole time the way through, had part-time jobs in various different roles just to sort of, 1, keep my brain going and 2, supplement the income in some way. But, I don't regret it. Very fortunate to be able to do that. But not everybody's in that position. Not every family's in a position where you can actually afford to have one at home and they can have run a little side business to maybe up their income. Some families don't have the choice, and that's the reality. But some of those families are choosing to also live a lifestyle that makes them have to do that. I think we have got used to wanting the best, and the kids want the latest and have the nicest things and all that. I suppose I come from a background where you get what you get, and we weren't like that with our kids. But I think that would be harder today when everybody's just getting everything new all the time. And like you say, we're going on big trips and holidays and skiing, and my kids, we say, well, what do? We do tight ass camping. So which is free camping. Where can we go where it's free? That was our holidays for like many years. But great times at the same time as well. So it does come down to what you're prepared to sacrifice to have a family. But it's not as straightforward as saying, oh well, one stays at home because it's just as cheap. It's not the case. Not these days. I don't think so.
It comes down to a financial decision. Like, I've got a friend of mine, his wife is a dentist and he's a greenkeeper who mows lawns now. So when it came to the time where they were struggling a little bit, needed a little bit more income, it was an easy decision for him to say, you know what, I'll take the kids to school, pick the kids up. He played Mr. Mum. He'd cut a few lawns during the day while he had a chance, but she went back to work and he played Mr. Mum. still does to this day. Although the kids are grown up and moving out now, but it was an easy decision for him to make. He said, and he said to me, he's going, "Oh fuck, you got no idea how hard it is." That was his exact words. He just said, "Mate," he said, it's a lot of work, and that's just another perspective. So that there is guys who have lucky enough to have a woman out there that's making lots of money and can have that role, you know. But there is a lot of work involved with that as well, and that's one thing that I'm sure everyone addresses. It is a job. It's not just stay at home and do nothing. There's a lot of work to be a homemaker at home.
I actually worked when I was teaching. There was a bloke who was a teacher as well, but his wife worked in IT. So obviously, IT people get paid a hell of a lot more than teachers in Victoria. So after their child was born, the same thing happened. She went back to work and he looked after the kid. But that has, and I guess it's changing a lot now in terms of, both parents are having sort of, equal or input to their children, happily for the kids as well as for the parents. But I just wonder, way back then when that was happening, what the general feeling towards that situation would be by society. So, the fact that men and women were doing that, all power to them. But I would still have been really interested to know what the kind of general thinking was. I know in our staff room, people were sort of thinking that he had it easy because he was home with the kids. And any mum who's been home with the kids knows that it ain't necessarily the easy option, right? But anyway, so I just thought I'd throw that in terms of, while it might be happening, one-offs here and there, the whole societal kind of setup has been geared differently.
Well, one of my my oldest kids' favorite TV shows is The Big Bang Theory. Now, I don't know if you guys have watched it or not. Adrian has watched it. I see everyone's going, yes. I'm not sure if you watch it, Brendan, Allison. But in The Big Bang Theory, Peter never watched it. I'll tell you what.
I don't watch TV. You've got to watch TV to watch that stuff.
Well, we watch on Netflix, right? Okay. And as the couples progressed, Penny got married to Leonard and Howard got married to another girl. And in the show, the girls all made more money than the boys. And if we talk about TV programming, do you think that this was a programming in order to help try and equal out or at least help girls make more money than guys?
It certainly was about STEM, showing that girls could be, in the science, maths, technology field. That's what that show was about, equality.
But there's
in
only
STEM.
one girl that's a scientist.
That's right, but
the other two were pretty blondes selling drugs.
Did you also watch Young Sheldon as well? I've watched both of them because my kids watch both of them, Young Sheldon and Big Bang Theory, and they're all about teaching, saying it's okay to be a nerd.
Well, that's part of the programming, I think. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with being a nerd.
But bear in mind,
huh?
Bear in mind, those are American programs, and the message they're broadcasting is to their population, which are anything but nerds. They're trying to encourage them to be smart. I mean, look at the bloody senator that was interviewing the head of TikTok in the Senate committee. And the guy's saying, he's from Singapore, and he's saying, well, have you tried to apply for nationality there? He said, I am Singaporean. Like the whole thing. And now all the...
And he's a Harvard graduate, the senator.
Yes, and now the other senator that's Asian said, he's from Harvard. That is questionable about Harvard, but straight out racism that anyone from Asia is untrustworthy and linked to the Communist Party in China. It was ridiculous.
Well, that's a small sample of Americans. There's smart ones and there's dumb ones.
But look, I've said this before. I worked for IBM for a dozen years as well, in Ireland and in Europe, not in the States. And the Americans that I met, almost without exception, were traveled, experienced, educated, open-minded, which is typical of people who go abroad anyway. It's when you stay isolationist that you become a navel gazer, and America has a problem. But remember, for the relatively free world where America goes, we are all trotting behind them. We're absolutely only 1 or 2 steps behind where they are, because what they are doing is what they're selling us and what we're willingly buying in every sense.
Absolutely. And
Yes,
most
sadly.
Americans, when they travel as Canadians.
But
That
see now, that's about education, because travel is education. It's mind expanding.
no,
And
it's about the Americans not wanting to admit that they're Americans when they get out of their country because of their brashness and their loudness, and they sound like Canadians and say, "Look, I'm Canadian," and that way they get more accepted in Europe.
But
true.
look,
whoa. I mean, yes, you could say American tourists are loud, but what's louder, is a minibus full of Chinese. That's pretty
you're
fucking
absolutely
loud
right,
too.
Adrian. That's what I was going to say. You got to balance this, and if you want to go to obnoxious philosophies, just live in the Middle East for a while.
And also, you're
It's
talking
not
about
restricted to
tourists
Americans.
and not travelers. Travelers tend to be a bit more quiet. Tourist tour groups are loud. I think we should steer away from that. Get back to the fact that senator is also a part of the very small population in America that are in politics. Okay, these people have a certain genotype that they're addicted to power and being in the public eye, and if they can't get into politics, they get into corporate life so that they can be on the cover of Fortune. And if they, it's all because if they can't get on the cover of Vogue or Rolling Stone magazine, you got to have
Times
talent
Person of the Year.
Exactly. And look at you need that type of skill set to be in the public eye in anything, whether it's sport, music, politics, academia. Look at Oppenheimer and the mental stamina and personality traits you need to cut through everybody else to get to the top, to where you can do what you want.
Okay, well, look, I think just getting back onto the topic, my personal view is that the gap between the women and men is quite closing. I think it's going to be a good day when a woman gets paid for what she does, just like a man, and the same amount. As soon as there's an inequality, well, that's discrimination, and discrimination creates a lot of trouble around the world. With that, thank you guys for participating. It's been a very interesting topic, and thank you.